My name is Elias Voss. I am 47 years old. I spent the last 7 years as the Director of Operations at Iron Veil Robotics. Before that, I worked in logistics, automation, and supply chain management. I was married. Our 18-year marriage ended 3 years ago. I was successful in my career, but I suffered losses in my personal life. Over time, my job became my only constant. My days revolved around schedules, contracts, and ever-changing supply chains. I focused on solving crises, cutting costs, and detecting problems before anyone else noticed. Every time the company's name gained recognition, my own name faded further into the background. But I didn't mind, because my mission was to keep the system running. Friends, don't forget to support the channel by subscribing. If you haven't subscribed yet, now is the perfect time. That morning, I arrived at the company early as always. There was nothing unusual in the meeting schedule. It had been 8 weeks since Celine Carrington was appointed CEO. She had neither called me nor visited the production floor. Still, I remained respectful. Adapting to new leadership was necessary. When I entered the conference room, everyone was in place. Celine's gaze locked onto mine. She was composed and measured. Her voice was clear but devoid of emotion. No one spoke. Celine gave a brief nod and took the floor. "We're looking for a more collaborative approach, so we've decided to part ways with you," she said. "This decision is not personal." The person making this statement had yet to set foot in the company I had built into a system. From an outsider's perspective, she was a visionary leader favored by investors, but she had no understanding of the operational realities. As the slides on the screen faded, something inside me stopped. Not anger, not sadness, just stopped. I closed my laptop, walked to my office, and started packing. I took down framed photos, notes, documents. One box for personal belongings, another for the operational backbone. Supplier agreements, price negotiations, crisis management plans, most of which were not digital. I had deliberately kept it that way. The system I built ran on personal relationships. It wasn't artificial intelligence that held the network together. It was trust. In 22 minutes, I was done. As I reached the door, Celine spoke again. "Elias, this isn't personal." I gave a slight nod. "I think so too," I replied. Only I knew how serious I was. I shook hands with a few team members. Some avoided my gaze, while others nodded slightly. No one was bold. People are loyal to positions, not to individuals. I got into my car and drove toward the Mississippi River. I had nowhere to go. For the first time, my schedule was empty. When I reached the shore, I looked at the water. Barges drifted slowly with the current. My phone started buzzing with messages. I ignored them. People were curious. Some would pretend to be upset. Some would demand explanations. None of them mattered. I quietly said to myself, "Congratulations on your freedom." But this freedom wasn't just mine. The unseen strings holding Iron Veil together were now gone, and Celine hadn't realized it. Not yet. Some systems rot from within. Some collapses happen in silence. If you've watched this far, don't forget to like the video and subscribe. 3 weeks had passed since I was fired. No calls, no messages. Iron Veil remained silent, but silence does not always mean stability. Sometimes, when no sound is heard, something is breaking inside. And I had begun to hear those fractures from a distance. The first sign came from an old acquaintance, Nolan Mercer. He was the sales director at Midwest Precision. For 7 years, we had sat across the negotiation table for every major deal. He called me directly. His voice was tense when I answered. "Elias, what's going on over there?" he asked. "Iron Veil wants to renegotiate its framework agreements with us. The new team didn't even notice the 15% price increase, and this is just the beginning." I swallowed hard. In that moment, everything became crystal clear. When I left, I hadn't just left behind an empty desk. I had left behind a structure on the verge of collapse. While I was there, the supply chain wasn't just a mathematical equation. It was built on human relationships. Negotiations happened through trust, not spreadsheets. But now, Excel tables were making the decisions. The second warning came from Valari. Their deliveries had been postponed by 6 weeks. Why? The new operations manager wasn't aware of the flexible delivery clause in the Scandinavian contracts because I had written it. 3 years ago, after a delivery crisis, I had implemented a custom provision for Valari. It wasn't recorded in any digital system. I was the only source of that knowledge. Inside Iron Veil, a crisis had begun. But I was still on the outside, just watching. They had let me go, yet the system was still searching for me. Then, I received another message from Nolan. This time, the conversation had shifted. "Boworks' CEO wants to meet you," he said. "Vera Caldwell. The company is restructuring, and they might need someone like you. I suggest you talk to them." I thought about it for a long time. Boworks wasn't exactly a competitor to Iron Veil. It was smaller, but its ethical standards were clearer. Joining them would look like a declaration of war against Iron Veil. But I wasn't after revenge. I was after meaning. The next day, I met Vera in person. She was quiet, observant, but direct. "Every crisis brings us people of character," she said. "If Iron Veil lost you, we can win you." I accepted. I joined Boworks as Chief of Operations. I spent my first day on the production floor, listening to the workers, observing the processes. The system was weak, but it wasn't rotten. There was potential. And in that moment, I understood. Iron Veil looked solid, but internally, it had been hollowed out. Collapse was inevitable. Friends, the best way you can support me is by subscribing to the channel. If you haven't subscribed yet, now is the perfect time. I was in my 3rd week at Boworks. From the very first day on the production floor, I couldn't forget what I felt. People didn't look at me. They listened to what I had to say. They didn't ask my title or my salary. The only question they wanted an answer to was, "Does he listen?" I listened. I asked. I took notes. I observed. The greatest lesson my 7 years at Iron Veil had taught me was this: managing data isn't enough. You have to manage trust. At Boworks, I didn't need to explain that. They already spoke that language. They just needed the right words, and I was those words. One morning, I saw an urgent email notification on my phone. Sender: Iron Veil Supply Department. Subject: Critical Supplier Update. As I read the content, a faint smile crossed my lips. Midwest Precision, Valari, Nordchain. 3 major suppliers had officially informed Iron Veil. Under these conditions, we will continue working exclusively with Elias Voss. The email stripped away all pretenses. I was no longer watching the game from the sidelines. I was in the center of it. Celine's panic wasn't about me. It was about herself. Because when systems collapse, numbers don't add up, and processes grind to a halt. She still thought she was in control. But in the business world, real control isn't measured by who pushes the buttons. It's measured by whose fingers are trusted to do so. After that email, I had a meeting with Boworks' CEO, Vera Caldwell. Our strategy advisor, Everett Lockhart, was also present. The 3 of us made a short but decisive call. Boworks would acquire Iron Veil. No, this wasn't revenge. It was restoration. It was about reviving a structure that had been ruined in the wrong hands, rebuilding it with the right minds. We prepared the plan: financial proposals, legal documents, communication strategy. Everything came together as if it had been waiting for this moment all along. A week later, I stepped back into Iron Veil's headquarters for the first time. As I walked through the door, the old security guard looked at me and nodded slightly. When I entered the conference room, silence filled the space. And there, sitting at the end of the table, was Celine Carrington. Her face held a mix of shock and fear. You know that moment, when someone places unwavering faith in a system, only to see it suddenly display a critical failure? That was her expression. But I didn't speak. Words were unnecessary. Celine already knew. I hadn't called anyone. I hadn't persuaded, threatened, or schemed. I had simply left. And that departure had created such a void in the system that no chart, no artificial intelligence could ever fill it. While crisis meetings piled up, while investors tightened the pressure around Celine, we simply waited for the right moment. And then, we made our official offer. Boworks submitted a bid to purchase 100% of Iron Veil's shares. The financial justification was clear. The operational plan was solid. The leadership strategy was strong. There was no one left to oppose it. That day, Celine Carrington's paper-thin leadership officially came to an end. But the real ending happened in that conference room, in silence. Because some defeats don't arrive with shouting, some come quietly. And that was when I understood. Power doesn't belong to those who shout, it belongs to those who listen. If you enjoy this content and want to see more, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and support the channel. 6 months later, I walked into the morning shift at the newly merged Weissen Iron Vale facility. Many faces recognized me. Some nodded shyly, others reached out with a firm handshake. But what struck me the most was this. People were smiling again. The same machines, the same walls, but a different energy filled the space. Productivity had doubled, profits were at a record high. But that wasn't the real victory. The true win was that people had regained trust. And trust can never be bought. It can only be built. That day, my old friend Everett Lockhart walked up to me. He leaned in and smiled. "We're going fishing. You've proven yourself, Captain." I smiled back, but my eyes drifted to the horizon, to the banks of the Mississippi River. The very place I sat 7 months ago. Unemployed, lost in silent thoughts. And in that moment, I understood. Stepping back is not always weakness. Some battles aren't won by shouting, but by waiting. And the greatest form of revenge is never fueled by anger, but by quiet, unwavering determination. Looking back today, I realize I didn't save Iron Vale. I saved myself. And if you're listening to this story, remember, when someone tries to erase you, you only become more visible, as long as your silence holds a plan and your heart holds a purpose. Because some leaders are appointed, but some prove themselves over time. I belong to the second group, and this isn't the end of my story. It's only the beginning. We're growing with your support. If you haven't joined us yet, hit that subscribe button and be part of this journey.